Hey, today I want to talk about something very important. I've had a lot of phone calls over this past pandemic period, especially even had one today. And I just want to highlight something that God's really just blown my mind about. And so it's interesting that people are concerned about with the pandemic revelations and just the questions that come. Are we living in revelations right now? Are we living in the end of times? So my answer to that is yes, because every day is a closer day to the end of times. And the reason people ask that is for two reasons. One, they are scared. They have a tendency of not knowing, of being out of control, not knowing what's to come, what's happening, is this all going to take place? It's not something to understand, to be afraid of, but yet it's something to expect. And then the other is just, man, I love this pandemic. This is awesome. Zombies are going to start rising from the dead. And just crazy people. And I have nothing against those people, but they're just crazy. That's it. But I want to go back to this point. I just want to illustrate something very important to you, the reasons of revelations. And any more so, the reasons that I probably love revelations the most is because the end of times brings forth a reign and a supremacy of Christ like never seen before. We talk about it, we hear it in the Bible, and Paul talks about it especially in the case here. And I want to present this to you on the understanding fact that when we talk about supreme, we talk about who Christ is. Supreme in the Webster's Dictionary means highest in rank or authority. And that's great when we talk about Jesus. A lot of times we go into the story of like who's the greatest of all time in basketball, Michael Jordan or LeBron James, who's the GOAT, greatest of all time. Then we go to football. Who's the greatest of all time? It's simple. It's Patrick Mahomes, not Tom Brady, not Joe Montana. It's Patrick Mahomes. That's the end of that. I don't want to hear anymore. I'm not biased or anything besides I'm the biggest Chiefs fan ever. I want you to understand the supremacy of God, though, the supremacy of Christ. In Revelations, it's not about the hoopla and all that's going on, the bowls being spilled out, the trumpet sounding, the four horsemen. Those things are cool to think about and to talk about because it's nothing we've ever seen. It can be scary. It probably can be scary. I get more excited because I know who's behind it. The supremacy of Christ's return. That's awesome. But let's talk about who he is right now. If you look at Genesis 1:1, it says, in the beginning, God. God, before creation. The next word is creation. God created the word created. God created. Whoa. Now, I'm just talking about the understanding that God was there before anything else. Paul talks about this when he's talking to Colossia here. And in Colossians, he talks to this church that's going on here. They're having this argument, who's the greatest of all time? Is it Jesus? Is he physically greater than these things? But when it comes to the angels, he's not greater because they're spiritual, they're angelic, they're heavenly, they're not a spirit, but yet Christ walked the earth. So they're going through this competition, and they're talking about who the greatest of all time is. Paul ends the discussions here in Colossians 1. It's talked about in Hebrews a little bit too. I'm going to read from Colossians 1 here, verses 15 through 23. The Son is the image, talking about Jesus, is the image of the invisible God. He's the firstborn over all creation, for in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or the powers or the rulers of authorities, all things have been created through him, and in him all things hold together. They all hold together in him. They all hold together in him. They all hold together in him. No, it's not on repeat. I just want to make sure you heard that part. He is before all things, and all them they are hold together in him. He is the head of the body in the church, and he is the beginning and the firstborn among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him and through him, and reconcile to himself in all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. That's very important, by making peace through his blood that was shed on the cross. That means it's going peace for you and I, okay? Once we're all alienated from God, and we're enemies in our minds because of the evil behavior. Our thoughts, our actions, sinful, okay? But now he has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through the death to present you holy in his sight without blemish and free from accusation. That's beautiful. There's a little bit more to this. I want you to finish on your own. But I want to tie this into you really quick. That's not good. I just shook that. But I want to tie this into you really quickly about this, okay? The supremacy is something that is ultimate. Jesus is the ultimate. He's in power and he's in glory. He's the ultimate importance. Jesus was supremacy over all the developing biblical primary. It talks about in Hebrews and Colossians. He is the ultimate that there ever was, will be. There's nothing greater. Understand that? You don't, because it's hard to, okay? He's greater than even you breaking down atoms, protons, neutrons, electrons, all these things. He goes about the subparticle atomic elements that are there. He goes so much more in depth to become the smallest thing that there ever was, to become the biggest. You look at our galaxy beyond galaxies and galaxies beyond that. We can't even count them. It's infinite number. He's bigger than that. And it's neat to simply say this. When you think about Jesus Christ, you think about Him walking on this earth, we have this hard time paralleling anything beyond this earth. So let's stop and let's start right there on earth. What did He do on earth? If you watch, He walked on water. He cleansed lepers. Okay? He caused storms to stop. He woke up out of bed one day, stop, storm stopped. I don't know if you can hear it right now. It's thundering outside around me, okay? He caused storms to stop. He opened the eyes of the blind. He opened the ears of the deaf. In 2 words, He says, get up. He's talking about Lazarus, and Lazarus got up from the dead. In 1 word, He says, live. And then somebody that was dead became alive. The understanding of who He's in control of this element, of this pandemic, of this world that we live in. We have this mindset, well, it's just going to happen, cause and effect, all this stuff. I'm telling you, there's nothing under Him. Nobody's put in power. Trump is in power because God's allowed it to happen. I'm not saying this is who God wants, but I'm saying this is who He's deemed this is here. Just as Obama was beforehand. When we stop and we look at the picture of who's supreme, it's not some leader, it's not some authority person, it's not some guy named Satan or Lucifer who's in control, but who is in control is His name is Jesus. He has victory over all. This is important doctrine and essential to our view as Christians to understand the supremacy of Christ. He is not simply a man greater in his time than the rest, but He is truly above all things in creation that has been created and will be created. The truth is essential for our salvation and understanding this. God is infinite, and therefore, in this understanding that God is infinite, our sin against Him is an infinite offense, meaning as we sin, that's the separation. It's not like, oh, I'm going to forget it over time. It's infinite. In order to atone for that infinite sin that we have against Him, that offense that we've gained, the sacrifice had to be infinite as well. So He sent His infinite Son, Jesus, as God. And this, the infinite sacrifice, happened. The supremacy of Jesus teaches us that He is not simply a spiritual being above the rest. But Paul tells us in Colossians 1:16, through Him all things visible and invisible in heaven and on earth, spiritually and physically were created. And in Him they still all hold together. Hebrews 1:4, as these Colossianaries, I don't know what you want to call them, as they're arguing Jesus is man, angels are better because all this, he ends this argument with this. Jesus is above absolutely everything. Drop the mic, end the argument, and it's over. We were specifically told He is greater than anything this world can ever throw at us, the enemy can ever throw at you. He's greater than this pandemic. He's greater than the troubles you're facing right now, whether it's financially, talking to youth students, talking to the parents, whether it's depression, whether it's emotionals, whether it's relationships. He's greater than all these things. Therefore, we need only to worship Jesus, not created things, not other creatures, not other spiritual beings. Jesus created things means that His creation is the only thing worthy to worship anyways. He's above all these things, so why worship something He's created? Why not worship the Creator? This is important for our understanding so that He still is sovereign and remains in control over all things. When we understand the supremacy of Christ, we have a more accurate view of Him. We more fully understand the depth of His love for us, and we are more able to receive and to respond to His love that He still has, that we're trying to understand. I don't get scared of Revelations and the talk about Revelations as I once did, but yet I get excited because at the very end of Revelations, you look at Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God. The very end is something to me that is so profound, something that is so great. Jesus says, yes, I am coming. And the response of the writer of Revelations here, the response is, yes, Lord, come. I get excited because I know the supremacy of Christ is going to be reigning at its full authority when he returns. And I know that I get a chance to be a part of that when he returns on his horse. I'm excited because we get a chance, those that are followers of him, those that believe in him, those that have been atoned from that offense that we sin against him by his blood, we get to be right next to him. That is exciting. Not something to be afraid of, not something to talk and dwell about, but it's exciting because Jesus is the reinstation of his supremacy at full effect. I love you. God bless. Take hope, take encouragement from that. Hey, if you really enjoyed the message and you want to worship something supreme and just have a video and a song that goes with this, Elevation just made one called Rattle. I want you to go ahead and click on the link below in the comments, and it'll take you to it to watch it. So, God bless you.